Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma. I am Kisma and I'm so happy you're here for this episode today. We're diving into something that's really juicy and tangible for you to really put into your life right away for some amazing results. So stick around. This is going to be really, really good. Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can have the mindset to get your life and business set.
As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the podcast, take a quick second to hit the subscribe button in iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. If you want to get the inside info for this and every episode, as well as some free gifts, go to illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. And now let's dive in to get your mindset for your life and business set.
Well, hey, Nick.
Hey, Kisma.
How has your week been?
The week's been fantastic. We just wrapped up a 2-day energy mastery intensive.
I know this is what, like your third one? I think your third certification.
Third or fourth, yeah.
Right. We had a group of amazing people. You people who are listening that were here, you were awesome.
It was so much fun. I love those events. They're intense. You know, it's definitely an intense kind of experience, but it's so much fun to bring people through that process and to just watch that process unfold in their own unique way. It's just, it really lights me up, and it you get kind of the extra good juju coming out of it to bring in some really positive momentum for the week. And looking forward to emceeing at an event this weekend.
Oh, cool. You're going to be on stage.
I'm going to be on stage. Cool. It makes me a little it's funny that it makes me actually a little bit nervous. Like, we have the podcast and I talk to people all day long, but actually standing up on stage is a little bit.
They're going to be looking at you.
Which is funny as a performer too. Yeah. Like, I don't have my I'm not safe behind my trumpet, you know.
Well, one thing I found, it was really funny, interesting, not really funny, but when, this goes for many of the types of works and technologies that we use, but when people start to realize the stuff that is on them that is creating either a belief, a persona, an identification, or a big fat story, and then they start to peel it off and let it melt away, there's such a significant change in that human. I mean, for one thing, it's just like, they let go. Another thing, they look different.
They look different.
I mean, their fields, and this is, this is why it can be so tangible, you guys. It's like when someone lets go of a belief that just doesn't serve them, all of a sudden they look younger, they look brighter, they look happier, it's like that baggage is so heavy and so debilitating.
It really is. And I mean, just like you said, physically, people look, years younger. And it's always just amazing to me.
So great.
And then for them to share some of their insights and everything, it's just such a cool thing. Yeah. So always exciting about that. But I'm also really excited about this topic. And it kind of made me think of this. You use this term, great hearts.
Great hearts.
And it honestly, it really reminded me of the people at the event this weekend.
Oh, they had great hearts and great souls.
And so many other people in our lives too. Like, we really are blessed with so many people with these really amazing hearts. And I can't wait to really talk about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I discovered this phrase in one of our favorite books that we're going to be kind of pulling from today. And the link to get the book will be in the show notes. But it was from a quote of Ralph Waldo Emerson. Do you want to read that?
I'd love to read that. So this is the quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson: "Great hearts send forth steadily the secret forces that incessantly draw great events." End quote. And then we continue on with Catherine Ponder's words: "And who are the great hearts? Those people who dare to think and radiate great thoughts and expectancies of success and prosperity instead of failure, trouble, and limitation. There's nothing great, unusual, or praiseworthy about failure, trouble, and limitation. Anyone can experience those things by following the line of least resistance and by entertaining the usual failure thoughts that one constantly hears every day. How often do we hear the complaint. Everything happens to me. I just can't win for losing. This is a tough world. The other fellow gets the breaks, etc. This beginning usually leads into a conversation filled with unpleasant experiences of the day, criticisms of jobs, coworkers, families, and governments, world leaders, war, crime, disease, and hard times, hard times, hard times.
Ugh. We don't want hard times, people.
No. We have enough.
Yeah. So this is such there's so much truth in this one paragraph. For one thing, I know everyone listening, you probably have those people in your life, whether it's at work, whether it's your in-laws, no offense, whether it's that friend who will just start talking and you're like, oh man, this is feeling heavy, right? And you don't want to insult your family or extended family, whatever, but the moment you engage in that conversation, it actually does pull your field down. Your energy starts to spiral downward. And when you listen to the first part, the quote, I mean, there were two main things I love that Emerson said. The great hearts, obviously. It's just like, it's a light holder. It's a light being. It's someone who's on this planet to create excellence and mastery and shift their own lives and the lives of the people they love. And then the secret forces.
Secret forces.
I was like, I want the secret forces. The secret forces are so cool.
I think what's really interesting here, the thing that that really caught my eye about it is where she says, anyone can experience those thoughts by following the line of least resistance.
Least resistance. I love that because how often we just make it so difficult.
Well, it's like that paved road. So I've heard Swamiji talk about this too.
The choice.
Okay, so you come to a fork in the road, which is basically every moment of every day. Mm-hmm. We always have the choice of action. And you see the paved road and you see the rocky road. But what we see what's within eyesight, okay? And we don't know what's beyond that. And it's like so often that paved road becomes a twisted, gnarly mess without realizing it. And then that rocky road, smooths out, so it's getting past that point. And I think so it's so easy to fall into that least resistance. And always following the path of least resistance. And I haven't found that in my own personal experience to always be the most productive path.
Yeah.
The one that really leads to the most direct and efficient route to get where you want to go.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's like, the right choice, right action versus something that's pleasurable and just as easy and feels good. But when we look about this, that's why we were talking about like every single moment matters, because every single moment you have a thought and you have a line of thoughts. As you think more about a certain thing or person or situation, that thought flow becomes thicker. And so as the energy grows behind the thought flow, you're sending out like this magnet. And you're bringing back into your life that which you expect. And that's why that word expectancies also grabbed me.
Well, expectancies. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I hear most often and have certainly fallen into myself is that expectation of just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Oh, man.
Things are going well right now. I better brace myself.
Yeah, it just sucks.
Right? Like, it's so stressful. You never really get to enjoy the success that you create for yourself. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, you really do. That's the bigger problem behind that, is setting up failure or setting up struggle or setting up disappointment.
Right.
It's basically what that does, is just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Yeah. And it's such a sad place to be.
It's a sad place, and it doesn't have to be. So this doesn't mean that, we always say this, life is ups and downs and all arounds. The thing is, through your every moment, through your thought flow, through your level of objectivity, through the height of your expectancies, you're able to navigate those ups and downs and all arounds, and you're able to shortcut them, really. Like the way this teaching is so crucial in that as you deliberately, that deliberate focus and that boldness, she talks about being bold in how deliberate you are with your thought flow, that is going to just change everything and start to bring in what it is you really want to manifest and create for your life.
Well, I want to ask you a few questions about that because I think for anybody who's listening to this, I think the understanding that your thoughts are creating your reality and it really does pay to monitor your thoughts and really check, where those are leading. However, when you really dial it down to that level of specificity,
right,
that every thought in every moment matters, it can get heavy really fast. Like monitoring each and every thought seems like a lot.
It does seem like a lot.
So what do you recommend people do about that? Or is there a way that you kind of look at that makes that a little less heavy?
Yeah, totally. With anything, practice. So if I use this example, I did a tribe call for my amazing people, and we talked a lot about this. And I used the example of if you have a bag of flour and it's a hot summer day and you open the flour and you find those little bugs in there, whatever they're called.
What kind of bugs?
There's like those little flower mites, like they're little black bugs that just...
I don't even know. Is this something I should be looking for?
No, we don't have them because you put your flour in the container.
Oh, okay.
But if you see one of those bugs, you're going to like toss the whole bag of flour out, right? You're not going to go sifting through and pulling out these little mites or whatever
thinking
they're
about
called.
Throwing it out anyway,
I know,
right?
Yeah. So... when you look at that and you have an hour's worth of thoughts, how many of those little contamination thoughts are getting in there to the point where you're like, oh man, I just feel like throwing away this day. Like this just is not working. That's where a person starts to have that downward, like the vibes aren't so good. Life is hard. It's not going to work. By the same token, if you have a bag of those shiny glass marbles, do you remember those?
Oh, yeah. I absolutely played with marbles.
And you look in the bag of marbles and you see this chunk of gold or you see a diamond. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, where's the other chunk of gold? Where's the other diamond? And you'll start looking and you'll expect it. And so those two bags of ingredients can either be heightened by these pieces of gold and diamonds or really clear thoughts, or brought down by those little flower mite bugs or negative thoughts. So in order to develop the practice, it really starts with a choice, and it's the notice, it's the awareness. That's why we always saying like present to the present moment is the most powerful place, because if you're in the here and now, then there's no way, if you're really, really present, you will not be worried and you will not be having anxiety unless you're in a very like interesting situation, because you won't be in the future. People create worry and anxiety when they go into, by the way, the non-existent future. They might have resentment or anger if they're focused on the past. And they can certainly bring down their self-confidence when they keep going like the shoulda, woulda, coulda thing about the past.
Oh, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So the boldness, everyone, in being able to be deliberate is your willingness to be here and now and to just simply notice, where are your thoughts going? It might at first feel like something's crystallizing, something's breaking, this is really tricky. But the more you do it, because once you shift to a higher thought, it's like, oh, you start to feel lighter. You start to see things, right? Notice that as you are thinking, you're changing your belief, and your belief becomes your truth. You will notice more miracles. You'll notice more opportunities because you're in the expectancies.
Well, I think you go through a couple different phases with this, where when you start to really look at the value, the quality, the power of each and every thought.
Mm-hmm.
And number one is just recognizing how often we go unconscious.
Yeah, right.
You get ungrounded. You just get really, really overly absorbed in something, and then all of a sudden you're just gone. And it can last for a few minutes, a few hours,
days.
I mean, really, for me, like that was something that would happen really for longer. Like when I first was kind of like starting to, think about spirituality or think about the way that I was living, really look at that, like I would have more flashes of insight where it's like, oh, I feel like I woke up for a second and then I'd like go back to sleep for
right.
months or years. But it's kind of like that. Like when you start looking at your thoughts and all of a sudden you just go unconscious. I think that's the first phase is just recognizing when you're going unconscious, which you only become aware of when you snap back into awareness.
You're
right?
like, oh, wait, where was I?
Exactly. And then the next phase of that is as you examine the content, the quality of the thoughts, is to really then notice, well, where are those thoughts leading? What are these patterns that start to circle around, so that you can start to clean up some of those different negative cycles that they go through.
Right, right. And one way to look at it, to really identify, there's going to be two things that show up. A human will focus on what they do not have rather than what they have. And if someone is really attached or chasing something or obsessed, like if those of you out there, I know we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to our podcast, you're building a business and you're like, oh, I'm looking for this, ROI, I'm looking to make this certain amount of money. That's great. Like, have your money goals. But if you are severely attached to that, it's going to keep running. And so, because you're looking at what you don't have. So when we focus on what we do have, it's like this amazing sense of presence in our field and gratitude. And that's definitely a more bold and deliberate thought to be like, oh, I've got this, I'm so grateful. And so that's a very distinct difference in thought. The other thing is when people are only focused on themselves, it creates such agitation and so much suffering, because when we're only thinking of ourselves, we are likely thinking about, again, what we don't have, what we want, what people are doing to us. There's that threat of victim energy. It just doesn't serve. It's going to be like just a downward spiral.
Yeah, fast one at that.
Fast one.
It tends to spin out much more quickly than we're even aware of.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You notice it right away. That shift in energy, the more attuned you get to it as well, and how quickly that really drains. It's so easy to get sucked into that. And I think, she really ties this up nicely here as she continues. Each of us constantly uses the law of radiation and attraction, whether we are aware of it or not.
Yeah.
But if you wish to enjoy more prosperity and success in life, you have to consciously, boldly, and deliberately take hold of your thoughts and feelings and redirect them towards prosperity and success. It is up to you to dare to choose and radiate outward through your thinking what you really wish to experience in life, rather than to get bogged down in unpleasant or failure experiences of the moment. These conditions can change as quickly as you can change your thinking about them. Oh man, that end quote, by the way.
Yeah.
That it's so amazing how quickly that can shift. It seems like when you get stuck in that certain frame of mind, it's going to last forever. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, this is going to last forever. How am I ever going to deal with this? I don't know. I've definitely experienced that. I'm sure a lot of people have, but it is amazing how quickly that can shift.
Very quickly. And one example, we often refer to performing artists and musicians because of our background, but I've seen, big major players play a concerto and they'll make a mistake. Many of the great players are not flawless. They're amazing, but mistakes happen. Their ability to not continue to focus on that mistake is what exactly saves the performance. Because once a performer just is like, oh man, I missed that, in their thoughts, you can just see it in their face too. You can hear it in their playing. Their thoughts will keep going back to, I can't believe I played that B flat, or I can't believe I played that F sharp, or whatever. It's done. It's over. So letting that go, and just like she said, that deliberate and bold face forward and think about what's next and what's the magic and the inspiration they're going to create. They just shake it off. I mean, that to me is a real pro. So someone who's mastering their life, really creating their life, it's like shake it off. Face forward and be deliberate and bold enough to say, I'm not going to focus on the fear and the agitation and the suffering and the negativity like so many people on the planet are right now, and be one of the great hearts.
Yeah. The great hearts. I
Be a
just
great
love that.
heart. Hashtag great heart.
Hashtag great hearts. Energetically speaking, I think it's important to understand that it really is just all energy.
Yeah.
That to me is the thing that
Sounds so cliche, but it's so true.
right, but that's the thing that allows the mind to not get stuck in the perception of the way it is,
Yes.
and to create that much more swift and clean shift.
Right.
Right. And it's not just happying. It's not just like, oh, everything happens for a reason or anything like that. It's not really about that. But there is a process of reframing in order to really get the gold that you need to get so that you can take your next step.
Exactly.
And energetically speaking, that's the thing that lets that happen much more easily, because you realize that it's just energy. And it's the mind and the emotions that perpetuate that cycle. So it's shifting that piece so that the energy can follow.
Completely. And it's like, I've heard so many like very, very successful speakers and coaches and whatever tell their story and the pain and the turmoil and the years. And I'm like, oh, dude, man, if you just had the energy piece, you wouldn't have had to spend so much time in that suffering state. It's like, sorry. But it's true. It's like to solve and resolve. That's why we're always so big on using at least some of the technologies we have, because it allows that impression that's before the thought to be one of a higher value.
Yeah. It allows you to really resolve the things around that so that you can shift more clearly and just have more space.
Yeah, exactly.
More space and more quietude in your head. I don't know about anybody else out there, but the head can get pretty noisy.
And congested. It's not fun. I want to speak a little bit too about, she uses the word failure. This is an interesting word. Many right now, a lot of people are saying there are no failures. And I like that. Like everything's a learning experience. But more importantly, she says somewhere in this section too, it's like a failure is simply the universe saying, hey, you didn't ask big enough. You didn't step in big enough. Like there's more. And I know Swami Parthasarathy talks about this too. It's like something happens that can be perceived as like, oh man, that's not so great. But we haven't, it's like you said, Nick, we got to see what the road has before us.
Yeah.
We have to walk that path. We've got to stay in our divine success track and to be willing to look for the miracles and magic. And yes, sometimes you got to hold your chin up and you got to take a breath and you got to be like, okay, what's next? Like, I got this, and be so determined to direct every single moment to a higher place. And you will then get out of the funk so much faster.
Yeah. That's a cool way of thinking about failure, not asking big enough or not stepping in big enough. That's pretty neat.
It's neat because the universe there's no limits, right? We know that. There's no limitation. And I think the conditioned personality gets many people into this spot. Well, I can only do this. How many times have we interviewed a potential client and they're like, well, I want to make just enough. And we're like, no. Not
on my watch.
Not just enough. Just enough. The universe does not know just enough.
For me, failure, the only real true failure is not getting the gifts and the teachings from your non-success, right, or that step of the path. And that's the thing that really perpetuates that part of the cycle, So if you just get focused on the failure and what you didn't get,
again, you're on what you didn't get.
Well, now you failed because you actually missed the whole point of it, right? And certainly there's going to be on any path a number of non-successes, right? Of not getting the result that you set out to get. There's absolutely nothing wrong. What would be weird is if you didn't experience that, right?
Yeah.
But the real failure is just not getting the gold.
Yeah.
Not getting the jobs.
And I would just say too, it's just things show up differently. We talk a lot about the higher self, the full potential. You've got this, higher version of you watching out, and divine right timing, divine right order. Things can show up in ways that we never even conceived. And sometimes we're so locked in, like it's got to be this. And sometimes it's that.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my new commitments, the things that I'm working on, is listening.
Listening.
Like not just
oh,
to,
like to me, this is how you listen to me?
I am.
That's awesome.
I am. That's been an effort for quite a long. It's a work in progress.
Why is it an effort? Why is it not like easy and flowing?
I just have to be diligent with it.
Be deliberate in your thoughts, Nick.
I think, well, I mean, if we're going to go there, I mean, I think in any intimate relationship, you get really comfortable with somebody, and they say, and then it's like you almost like you want to complete their sentences or something like that. And it's actually not really conducive for good.
No.
And both of us think kind of fast. And so there can be like, oh man, like I got to like just slow down and actually like listen. But what I really meant was not only just listening to you, but really taking that in and taking action based on it, and listening to higher guidance, and actually listening to what's there for me. I've it's so easy to get stuck in that way that I think that things are supposed to be, and what I've found is that if I want my life to be 10 times easier, then I really need to get 10 times better at listening, because the information and the guidance is there, and it's just a matter of whether or not you're going to act on it, or whether or not you're going to keep doing it the way you've been doing it.
Right. And listening comes when you're present to that present moment.
Exactly.
That's
And that's again why every moment counts.
Every moment counts.
It's
every
right
single
there.
moment. And it's, you asked earlier, I'm not even sure if I was able to help everyone, but you're like, oh, it seems heavy to direct every thought. And I went back to that time we were in India, and Swamiji said, there's not a thought that goes through without being checked by my intellect. And we were like, what?
It was hard to even conceive.
What? How can you do that? But it is like, this is the quality of this human. But we can observe. We really, really can. And not without like, oh, I should have thought this. Like, don't do that. Just be like, okay, let me just turn this around. Let me turn this around. And honestly, I truly, truly believe it's a lower energy of what's happening on the planet. It's conditioned personality. It's what we see in the news and on the media, where it is so quick to go to the negative. So avoid those conversations, avoid the gossip, avoid the people that just want to, trash somebody else. And if you're feeling some sort of jealousy to someone else, lift them up. Like, direct everything. And it's phenomenal.
Well, you're bringing up a really interesting topic that I hadn't really considered, is like, okay, well, that's around us all the time. What do people do? Do we just go like live in a cave? Like, how do you function in the world and not not get drawn into those things at a certain point?
Like everything, I really do believe it's choice. I mean, it's understanding the level of where this stuff is coming in from. I know that it's a responsibility for most of us to know what's going on in the news. So watch the news, know what's going on, and don't crack out on it. But most importantly, it's like, how are you receiving the information? If someone's having a really like juicy, downward draft, low vibe convo about what's going on at the work, it's your choice. You're either going to step in, or you're going to be like, that's too bad, and leave, or not interact, or cut your cords, or think about something else. I just truly believe it comes to choice.
Yeah, I think it has to do with your attitude towards it. Certainly when you're in it, it can take a toll. Like it can, it can drag you down and get a little bit heavy. But ultimately, any reasonable human being should be able to manage that in small doses and simply not be affected by it. It's the mental indulgence of buying
That's
into
a
it,
good point.
letting yourself get enrolled in that. That really, I think,
thickening the thought flow, continuing the conversation. Yeah, it is a mental indulgence.
Yeah, but energetically, you do require a certain level of resiliency just to be around those things.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. This is true. There was something else that she wrote that it's not from Catherine. It's basically a teaching that's been around the block. But I love the way the quote was sustained here. And it's like, we are where we are because we are what we are. And we are what we are because of our habitual thinking. And I was like, oh man, this is so good, because lately on my webinars and just working with clients and students, what's coming up, whether it's around their life purpose, their soul purpose, how they are, what their goals, their ideals, it's more about who do you want to be? Like that's been the question coming up for weeks and weeks. Like, who do you want to be? It's not like, what do you want? Who do you want to be? Because the moment you decide who you want to be, you then start to attract, whether it's people, places, times, and events of that quality. And it allows you to sustain your direction of thoughts, your ability to be in the world and less affected by the world simply by who you want to be.
I think it's really easy to live by default of your personality and your habitual patterns.
Right.
It's really easy to fall into that. I can't think of, one person, well, maybe save Swamiji, but who hasn't, fallen into that and has that tendency to get caught into that.
Right.
But it's really breaking those patterns to live in a different way that really makes a huge difference. And I can't remember who I was talking to. I was talking to one of my clients recently and, getting a little heavy, a little bummed out with where things are at the moment and non-successes, so to speak. And it's like, well, wait a second, let's look at just 6 months ago.
Right.
That perspective, it's not something I like to use all the time, but I think it is valuable and start to look back at that. We start to look back at that and they're like, boy, you know what? Like I barely recognize that person.
Yeah, right.
It's like I almost don't recognize myself. Like so much has changed in this period of time, and I think that's kind of one of the telltales as you break out of that habitual thinking and the behavior that follows that is all of a sudden you look at yourself and you're like, whoa, like this is a radically different experience. Like who is this person?
Exactly.
And that can be very unsettling, but I think that's actually really the magical place to be because if you're not defined by all those things, you get to create yourself in every moment.
Exactly.
And that's that decision to be who you want to be is something that you get to decide moment by moment, and you have more freedom and flexibility with that, which I think is truly amazing.
It's so great. I just love it.
So you have one more quote here
to
share here. There's a lot of highlights in this section.
It's my favorite book.
I like how you highlight and underline. Is there a code to that or
I don't know.
No, you just
I just get so excited. I can't even get past the second chapter of this book because I keep rereading it. We'll put the link in the show notes, guys, but it's so phenomenal.
It really is fantastic.
My whole next mindset course for women will be based around a lot of this book.
Oh, that's awesome.
Just hint.
So, quote, but what a sense of freedom it gives you to realize that whatever you center your attention upon steadily, constantly, and deliberately in your thoughts, feelings, and expectancies forms the experiences of your life. When you realize this, life becomes easier, simpler, and more richly satisfying. You then no longer feel that you have to argue, beg, reason, plead, or appeal to anyone for your desired good. Instead, you quietly go to work in your thinking to mentally choose, mentally accept, and mentally radiate what you wish to experience in life. It gives you a victorious feeling even before the rich results begin to pour in.
Oh, I love it.
It's amazing.
A victorious feeling.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. Like, that's freedom, right? I mean, the non-attachment to having to have it a certain way or what you don't have, but just this expectancy that life is good to you.
Yeah. I like these 3 words that she uses here: steadily, constantly, and deliberately.
Steadily, constantly, and deliberately.
Now, when I think about deliberate in particular, deliberate is not something that goes so fast, right? It's like to be really deliberate, it pays to start.
Present, next moment.
Right, but it pays to start a little bit slower.
Yeah,
to be truly deliberate and to truly precise.
Yeah.
And then to let it build from there.
Right.
Like, I'm sure you did this. You practice excerpts.
Oh, yeah.
You practice an excerpt very slowly.
Yeah.
Paying attention to each nuance of every note, and then gradually speed it up. And
Right.
before you know it, you've just totally reworked the entire phrase or passage, and it's
Right.
become a brand new and much more brilliant
Yeah.
expression.
Yeah.
And I think the same way in the thoughts, like it is challenging, I think, at times to really monitor. And it can be frustrating of like, oh man, like I just went unconscious again. Like, dude, where have you been for the last hour? All the way down in the Facebook feed or like
Yeah.
3 articles deep in some Distractify or something like that. Not that I've ever done that. I mean, I've heard that people do that. I don't do that, but I've heard that
Yeah.
happens.
Right.
I have one last question for you, if you don't mind, if you'll
Sure.
indulge me. Now, one of the things that also came up, which I think is important to this topic, is I've seen people and worked with people who are afraid to share really honestly what they're actually thinking. They're like, oh, I don't want to create that. I don't even want to share that. But it seems that there is a time and a place for that. Like they have this fear about, oh, well, if I speak like that, I don't even want to say it.
I look at it this way. Those people, you're thinking it anyways, people. So get it out. You're thinking it like a whole lot and you're dwelling on it. You have to say it and get it out and then just like move on.
Better out than in.
Better out than in. And I get it. Like, guess what? I'm not supposed to say that. Well, if it helps you to resolve it, you are supposed to say it so that your little brain there ain't going over and over it, chugging it away all the time.
Yeah, I think that's important because
Not that you have a little brain. Everyone, you have big brains.
It gets very...
I don't want to insult anybody. Let's say my little brain.
Your little brain. It is more challenging, I think, to work it out in your head, and I think that's where a lot of people want to just turn inward and like, I'm going to work this all out myself, and then I'll have the right answer.
Good luck.
And that's the hard way of doing things.
Heavy.
It just takes twice as long, and it's just not as helpful.
Yeah.
So I think there is a place for that, a place and a space for that. I think if you're going to dump it all out on somebody else, I think that is something that you want to think about, because I don't believe that that's the kindest thing that you can do.
No.
But there is a place and a space.
Right.
And sometimes it's like you just, I've heard, I've heard that said and certainly, just feel like, oh, I just got to like vent it out. And you're basically like just dumping all over somebody.
Yeah, journaling is good. Having a coach is good. Having a time and space where you're just going to get it out of you and it's done and you're cutting cords, you're cleaning it up. I mean, this is what it's about. But anything so that you can turn that thought flow back to that beautiful, bold, deliberate thoughts of really the wonderment of our world and what we can create.
Yeah. And that's where I think the energetic tools are so incredibly magical, because it really is about resolving the energy behind those things so that you can move forward in a free and clear way.
Right.
The Magic Box is so brilliant at that, and some other tools that we teach in Energy Mastery. Like these are things that help you to resolve that. Cord cutting, heck, just cord cutting is a really good way to get out of something old and into the version of you that you actually want to be.
So before we go, let's give everybody a quick little life hack or higher thought hack.
Higher thought hack.
Higher thought hack. I like that. You've heard us talk about this before. Breath is super important because it brings you to the present moment. But this particular breath pattern is called 6363. So bring the tip of your tongue to the roof of your mouth, and then through your nose, inhale for 6 counts, fully, slowly, completely. And when you get to the top, hold for 3 counts. And then your exhale will also be through the nose for 6 counts. And when you get to the bottom, you'll hold the exhale for 3 counts. That's really important. So it's inhale for 6, hold the top for 3, exhale for 6, and hold the bottom for 3. And then take your left fingertips and just tap your heart. It opens up the energy around your heart. It allows you to experience more gratitude, joy. It is the life hack that will bring you to everything you have rather than focusing on what you don't have. Because what you have is here with you now, and it is what will multiply and create your miracles and magic as the train of truth comes shooting by.
perfect time.
I know. Love that train of truth.
And now what I would recommend is just don't be deceived by the simplicity of this. It is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, very powerful.
Yeah.
So anyways, thanks everyone for being here. Super, super happy to have you. If this resonated with you, please share it and click that little download button on your iTunes. And as well, go to the show notes and we'll have a link where you can get the book that we reference because it's really juicy and awesome.
Have a really fantastic week, everybody. Make every moment count. And we'll see you next time. Peace.
Namaste. Hey, thanks for jamming with us today. And if you enjoy Illumination Podcast, please go ahead and share it with someone you love. Give us a rating, review, download our podcast. And remember, you can find us at illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. Talk to you soon. Namaste.